The Great Hall of Station Ornth was the largest room Unipark had ever seen. It stretched out like a cathedral made of crystal and light, with walls that seemed to glow from within. Hundreds of alien beings filled the curved seats that rose up on all sides, their strange bodies moving and shifting like a living ocean of scales. Feathers and chitin. Una stood at the back of the small human group, a military uniform feeling too tight against her skin. She was 34 years old, the youngest officer Earth had ever sent to a galactic council meeting. Her superiors had told her it was an honor. Right now, it felt more like a punishment. The noise in the chamber was incredible. 12 different species were all talking at once, their voices mixing into a storm of clicks, hisses, and sounds that hurt her ears. Her translator device struggled to keep up, feeding broken sentences into her mind. Claim is older than your entire civilization. Murdered 3,000 of our workers. Will never accept, Ambassador. Do-Wan Lee stood beside her, his gray hair neat and his old face calm. He had been a diplomat for 40 years, and nothing seemed to shake him. His eyes moved slowly across the chamber, watching everything. The boundary crisis, he said quietly, leaning toward Una. They have been fighting about this for 200 years. Longer than humans have had electricity. Una watched as a tall creature covered in blue armor plate slammed one of its many limbs against its speaking platform. The sound echoed through the hall like a gunshot. Across the chamber, a snake-like being with silver scales rose up and hissed something that made half the delegates gasp. The Velith and the Mordre, Do-Wan explained. They hate each other more than any species in the galaxy. And both of them hate the Pelax, who also claim the boundary zone. What's in the boundary zone that's worth all this? Una asked. Minerals. Rare elements needed for faster-than-light engines. Enough wealth to power civilization for 10,000 years. Do-Wan's voice was tired. Enough wealth to kill for. Again and again. The argument continued. A Velith general was now describing, in terrible detail, what his forces would do to the next Mordre ship that entered the disputed space. The Mordre delegate responded by listing every Velith world within striking distance of their fleet. Una felt sick. She had studied war at the academy. She had served in 2 small conflicts near Earth's colonies. But this was something else. This was hatred that had been building for centuries, passed down from generation to generation like a poison in the blood. Why are we here? She asked. Humans, I mean. We joined the galactic community 15 years ago. We're children compared to them. What can we possibly offer? Before Do-Wan could answer, a new voice cut through the chaos. It was the council speaker, an ancient creature called a Pelori. It looked like a bird that had grown as large as a bear, its feathers faded to gray, its body bent with age. But when it spoke, the entire chamber fell silent. The human delegation, the speaker announced, has requested time to address the assembly on the matter of the boundary crisis. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly every being in the chamber turned to look at the humans. Una had faced enemy soldiers. She had been shot at. She had watched friends die. But nothing had prepared her for this moment, for the feeling of hundreds of alien eyes, sensors, and organs all focusing on her small group at once. And then something strange happened. The delegates near the human section began to move. Not toward them, away from them. They shifted in their seats, leaned back, created distance. The Velith general, who had been roaring about destruction moments ago, suddenly became very quiet and still. The Mordre delegate, the silver serpent who had threatened entire worlds, actually lowered its head. They were afraid. Una felt a chill run down her spine. She looked at Do-Wan, but the old ambassador was already walking forward, moving toward the central speaking platform with slow, careful steps. The chamber was completely silent now. Not the silence of respect or attention. The silence of prey animals when a predator walks among them. Do-won reached the platform and turned to face the assembly. He looked small and old and fragile compared to the massive aliens around him. A human. A soft, short-lived, primitive human. But every being in that room was watching him like he was the most dangerous creature in the galaxy. Distinguished delegates, Do-won began, his voice gentle and calm. I thank you for this opportunity to speak. No one responded. The Velith general's many eyes were fixed on Do-won's hands, as if expecting him to pull out a weapon. The Mordre delegate had coiled its body tight, ready to flee. Yuna finally understood. During her training, she had read the classified reports. She knew what had happened 15 years ago, when the Mordre scout fleet had first arrived in Earth's solar system. She knew about the warning shot that the Mordre had fired. She knew about what humans had done in response. The other species called it the Soul Response. In their military academies, they studied it the way humans studied ancient disasters. They spoke of it in quiet voices, like children telling scary stories around a fire. The Mordre had expected humans to be like other young species, scared, willing to negotiate, eager to surrender rather than fight. Instead, they had found something else entirely. They had found a species that did not know how to give up. A species that, when threatened, did not run or hide or beg. A species that strapped nuclear bombs to cargo ships and rammed them into enemy cruisers. Admiral Taiwu. Shin's final transmission from that battle was famous across the galaxy. You shot first. We'll shoot last. The Mordre had lost their entire scout fleet in 2 days. Not because humans had better technology. Their ships were primitive, slow, barely capable of traveling between planets. But because humans fought with a fury that the Mordre had never seen before. A fury that terrified them. Now, as Do-won stood before the council, Yuna saw the terror reflected in 100 alien faces. 15 years had passed, but the memory had not faded. If anything, it had grown stronger, twisted by rumor and fear into something almost mythical. Humanity was not respected in this chamber. Humanity was not admired. Humanity was feared. And as Yuna watched Do-won prepare to speak, she wondered if that fear would be enough to change anything, or if it would only make everything worse. Do-won stood at the center of the great chamber, surrounded by silence. The crystal walls caught the light and threw it back in soft colors, but no one was looking at the walls. Every eye, every sensor, every perception organ in the room was locked on the small human figure at the speaking platform. He waited. He had learned, in 40 years of diplomacy, that silence was a tool like any other. Used correctly, it could be more powerful than words. Finally, the Velith general spoke. Its voice was harsh, clicking like stones being ground together. Human, why do you waste our time? Your species knows nothing of this conflict. You are infants. You have barely learned to walk among the stars. Do-won nodded slowly. You are correct, General. Humanity is young. 15 years ago, we had never left our own solar system. We had never spoken to another intelligent species. We were alone, looking up at the stars, wondering if anyone else was out there. He paused, and his voice became softer. Then the Mordre came. A ripple of tension moved through the chamber. The Mordre delegate, the silver serpent called Terzis, lowered its head even further. Its scales made a soft scraping sound against each other. I will not speak of what happened during those 2 days, Do-won continued. I think everyone in this room knows the story well enough. I will only say this. We did not start that fight, but we finished it. The Velith general made a sound that might have been laughter. Finished it? You murdered an entire fleet. You used weapons that turned space itself into fire. We have studied your tactics, human. They are disturbing. Yes, Doan said simply. They are. He turned slowly, looking at each section of delegates in turn. Let me tell you something about humanity that your intelligence reports may have missed. We are not a peaceful species. We have never been peaceful. For as long as we have existed, we have fought against nature, against disease, against each other. He raised one hand, counting on his fingers. In the last 300 years alone, we have had 2 wars that killed more than 50 million people each. We have built weapons that can destroy entire cities in a single flash of light. We have poisoned our own air and water. We have hunted other species on our planet to extinction. The chamber was utterly still. Even the ambient sounds, the hum of ventilation, the soft beeps of translation devices seemed to fade away. We are monsters, Doan said. By any reasonable measure, we should have destroyed ourselves long ago. Many times we came close. There were moments when everything we had built stood on the edge of complete destruction. He lowered his hand. But we did not destroy ourselves. Do you know why? No one answered. The question hung in the air like smoke. Because we learned. Slowly, painfully, with terrible cost we learned. We learned that war has a price that must eventually be paid. We learned that hatred is a fire that burns the one who holds it. We learned that the enemy of today can become the friend of tomorrow if both sides are willing to try. The Mordre delegate stirred. Pretty words, human. But words do not bring back the dead. Words do not repair the ships you destroyed. Words do not erase the memory of watching our people burn. Doan turned to face Terzis directly. No, he said. They do not. I will not apologize for what we did 15 years ago. You fired first. We responded. That is the way of war. He took a step toward the Mordre section, and several delegates flinched back. But I will say this, we did not want that war. We were not looking for enemies when we reached out into space. We were looking for friends, for teachers, for anyone who might help us understand this vast, strange universe we found ourselves in. His voice became harder. Instead, we found a fleet of warships pointing weapons at our homes. We found a species that assumed we would bow down simply because they were bigger and older and stronger. Terzis hissed softly. You cannot blame us for. I'm not blaming anyone, Doan interrupted. I am explaining. There's a difference. He turned back to face the full assembly. Humanity fought the Mordre because we had no choice. But that is not who we want to be. That is not why we came to the stars. He gestured at the chamber around them. Look at this place. 12 species, gathered together, trying to solve a problem that has lasted for 200 years. You have technology we cannot imagine. You have knowledge that would take us centuries to learn on our own. You have built wonders that make our greatest achievements look like children's toys. His voice softened. And yet, here you are, still fighting, still dying, still passing your hatred down to your children and your children's children. 200 years of bloodshed over rocks in space. The Velith general bristled. Those rocks contain resources that... I know what they contain, Doan said. I have read the reports. Enough rare elements to power every fleet in this chamber for 10,000 years. Enough wealth to make any species the dominant power in the galaxy. He shook his head slowly. And how much of that wealth has been spent on the war itself? How many ships have been built only to be destroyed? How many workers have been trained only to die? How many brilliant minds have been wasted solving problems of death instead of problems of life? The chamber was silent again, but this time the silence felt different. Less afraid, more thoughtful. Humanity has fought many wars, Doan said. Too many. But we have also ended many wars. We have sat across tables from our worst enemies and found ways to live in peace. Not because we forgot what they did to us. Not because we forgave them. But because we looked at the cost of continued fighting and decided that peace, imperfect as it might be, was better than endless war. He looked at the Velith general. Your people have lost thousands in the boundary zone. He looked at Terz's. So have yours. He looked at the third section of delegates, where the insect-like Pelak sat in nervous clusters. And yours? Is that not enough? His voice was quiet now, almost gentle. Is 200 years of death not enough? How many more must die before someone says stop? The Velith general's many eyes blinked slowly. And what would you have us do, human? Simply surrender? Give up claims that our ancestors died to protect? Dowan smiled. It was a small smile, tired and sad. No, General. I would not ask that of anyone. What I am asking is much harder. He straightened his shoulders, and suddenly he did not look old anymore. He looked like a man who had been waiting his whole life for this moment. I am asking you to try something new. Dohan raised his hand, and a holographic image appeared in the air above the speaking platform. It showed a region of space filled with asteroids and small moons, glowing points marking resource deposits scattered across the void. The boundary zone. For 200 years, he said, 3 species have fought over this region. Each claims historical right. Each has invested blood and treasure to defend that claim. Each believes with absolute certainty that the zone belongs to them and them alone. He moved his fingers, and the image changed. New markers appeared: red for Velith, blue for Mordre, green for Pelax. The zone was a mess of overlapping colors, claims crossing and recrossing like tangled thread. This is what your conflict looks like from the outside, Dohan continued. 3 children fighting over the same toy, each one breaking it a little more with every battle. The Velith general made an angry sound, but Dohan raised his hand. I am not here to insult you. I am here to point out a simple truth. None of you are winning. The boundary zone produces less than 10% of what it could because you spend more time fighting than mining. Your fleets are tied down protecting empty rocks instead of exploring new space. Your best engineers design weapons instead of extraction equipment. He let the words sink in. Everyone is losing. Slowly, painfully, generation after generation, everyone is losing. The Mordre delegate Terz's uncoiled slightly. We have tried treaties before, human. They never last. Someone always breaks them. Yes, Dowan agreed. Because your treaties are built on trust, and you do not trust each other. Why would you? After 200 years of war, trust is impossible. He smiled that small, tired smile again. Fortunately, my proposal does not require trust. The holographic display changed again. The colored markers faded, replaced by a new pattern, a grid of stations and connecting lines that covered the entire zone. This is what I am proposing, Dohan said. A joint operation, not owned by any single species, not controlled by any single government, managed by a neutral party. And who would this neutral party be? The Velith general demanded. You? Yes, the chamber erupted. A dozen species began talking at once, their voices mixing into chaos. The Velith general was on its feet, limbs waving. The Mordre delegate had risen up to its full height, silver scales catching the light. Dohan waited. He stood perfectly still at the center of the storm, his hands clasped behind his back, his face calm. Slowly, the noise died down. The delegates remembered who they were talking to. They remembered what humans had done when threatened. Hear me out, Dohan said quietly. I know this sounds strange. A species that joined the galactic community 15 years ago, offering to manage the most valuable piece of real estate in the sector. You must think we are either arrogant or insane." He began to walk slowly around the platform, speaking as he moved. "But consider, we have no claim to the boundary zone. We gain nothing from one side winning over another. We have no ancient hatred, no old wounds, no generations of remembered pain. We are, perhaps, the only species in this room who can look at this conflict and see it clearly." He stopped and faced the Vela section. "General, your people need the resources of the zone. Without them, your expansion into the outer systems will stall within 2 generations." He turned to the Mordre. "Delegate Tarzus, the same is true for your kind. The elements in the zone are essential for your ship construction. Without access, your fleet will begin to age and weaken." Finally, he looked at the Pelax. "And your hive worlds are already feeling the pressure. Your population grows faster than any other species in the sector. Without new resources, your people will face starvation within 50 years. His voice became softer. "You all need the zone. That is why you fight. But fighting has not given any of you what you need. It has only made certain that everyone gets less." He returned to the center of the platform. "My proposal is simple. Humanity will build and operate extraction facilities throughout the zone. We will hire workers from all 3 species. We will sell the extracted resources back to each of you at fair prices, with guaranteed minimum allocations based on current need." The Veleth general made a clicking sound. "And what do you gain from this arrangement, human?" "2 things," Dohwan answered. "First, a percentage of the profits. Humanity is a young species with much to learn. Resources will help us grow faster. And second?" Dohwan's expression became serious. "Knowledge. Each of you has technologies we have not yet developed. In exchange for our neutrality and our services, we ask for access to your scientific archives. Not weapons technology, we have enough ways to kill already. But medical science, engineering, agriculture, energy production. The tools of life, not death." The chamber was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet. Not fear. Calculation. Terzis spoke first. "You ask us to let humans control the most valuable region in the sector. How do we know you will not simply take it for yourselves?" "You don't," Dohwan admitted. "But consider, if we betrayed this arrangement, we would face the combined anger of 3 species, plus every other civilization that depends on zone resources. Humanity is dangerous, yes, but we are not stupid. We know we cannot fight the entire galaxy." He paused. "Besides, betraying you would mean becoming what we fear most, another empire built on conquest and domination. We have had enough empires in our history. We are trying to build something different." The Veleth general's many eyes studied Dohwan for a long moment. "You speak well, human, but words are wind. What guarantee can you offer?" "The best guarantee of all," Dohwan said. "Self-interest. Every species involved in this arrangement will profit. Every species will have something to lose if it falls apart. And every species will be watching every other species for signs of cheating." He spread his hands. "Trust is impossible. But mutual suspicion, balanced carefully, can be almost as good." The chamber fell into discussion. Delegates whispered to each other, consulted data screens, sent messages to their home governments. The noise rose and fell like waves on a shore. Yuna watched from the back of the human section, her heart beating fast. She could see the calculation in alien eyes. The fear was still there, but something else was growing alongside it. Hope. After what felt like hours, the council speaker raised its ancient wings. "The human proposal will be taken under consideration. This session is adjourned until the next cycle." As the delegates began to file out, Dohwan walked back to the human group. His steps were slow, his face tired, but there was something in his eyes that Yuna had not seen before. Did it work? she asked. Darwan watched the aliens leaving the chamber, Velith and Mordre and Palax, all walking out through the same doors. Not fighting, not killing, just walking. It's a start, he said softly. That's all we can ever hope for. A start. 6 months after Ambassador Darwan's speech, Lieutenant Haniel Cho stood in the docking bay of Security Station 7, watching a Mordre transport ship approach through the massive windows. The ship was beautiful in its way, silver and curved like a swimming creature, moving through space with a grace that human vessels could not match. It was also covered in weapon ports. Old habits died hard. Haniel was 26 years old, fresh from the Joint Forces Academy, assigned to the Boundary Cooperative Zone as part of the first wave of human security personnel. Her orders were simple: keep the peace, resolve disputes, and try not to start any wars. Easy, she thought. Nothing to worry about. The transport docked with a soft thump, and the airlock doors began to cycle. Haniel straightened her uniform and tried to look confident. Her commanding officer would be on that ship, a Velith named Thurek, a veteran of the Boundary Wars who had personally killed more Mordre than most humans had ever seen. And now he was supposed to work alongside Mordre security forces to protect joint mining operations. The airlock opened. Thurek stepped through, and Haniel had to stop herself from stepping back. He was tall, nearly 3 meters, covered in blue armor plates that clicked softly as he moved. His head was a mass of compound eyes, dozens of them, all moving independently, all looking at her at once. His limbs, 4 arms, 2 legs moved with the precision of a machine. Behind him came 3 more Velith, and behind them, 3 Mordre. The serpentine aliens moved differently, flowing across the floor like water, their silver scales catching the station lights. They kept their distance from the Velith, coiling slightly whenever they got too close. Haniel saluted. Commander Thurek. I am Lieutenant Haniel Cho, your human liaison officer. Welcome to Station 7. Thurek's many eyes all focused on her at once. It was deeply unsettling. Human, he said. His voice came through her translator as a clicking, mechanical sound. I have studied your kind. You are violent, unpredictable, dangerous. Haniel kept her face steady. With respect, sir, so is everyone in this room. That is why we are here to be dangerous together, so no one has to be dangerous alone. For a long moment, Thurek did not move. His eyes kept watching her, turning slightly, examining her from every angle. Haniel felt sweat forming on the back of her neck, but she did not look away. Then Thurek made a sound. It started low, like stones grinding together, and built into something higher, almost musical. Her translator took 3 seconds to process it. Laughter. You are strange creatures, Thurek said. But perhaps that is what we need. The first year in the zone was the hardest thing Haniel had ever experienced. Every day brought new problems. A Velith mining team accused a Mordre crew of stealing equipment. A Palax worker was injured in an accident, and 3 species blamed each other for the faulty machinery. A human engineer made an innocent gesture that in Velith culture was a deadly insult. Arguments led to fights. Fights led to injuries. 3 times, actual weapons were drawn. But each time, somehow, disaster was avoided. Not because the species learned to trust each other, that was still far away, but because the humans were there, standing between the angry parties, refusing to take sides, refusing to give up. Haniel learned more about alien psychology in that first year than most diplomats learned in a lifetime. She learned that Velith respected strength, but valued patience more. She learned that Mordre pride could be soothed with careful words and proper ceremony. She learned that Palax hive minds needed time to reach consensus, and that rushing them only made things worse. She learned that everyone, regardless of species, wanted the same basic things: safety, respect, and a chance to build a better future. Engineer Jisoo Kang arrived at Station 12 in the third month, assigned to solve a waste disposal crisis that threatened to poison the Mordray habitat sections. The Mordray filtering systems were not compatible with human or Velith equipment, and no one could agree on a solution. Jisoo spent 3 days studying the problem. Then she spent 72 hours straight building a new system from parts she borrowed, salvaged, and in one case created from scratch using a 3D printer and pure stubbornness. When the new filters went online, the Mordray delegation sent her a formal commendation, the first ever given to a human by their species. The document hung on her wall for the rest of her life. Dr. Byung-Hoon Lim, a xenobiologist assigned to Research Station 4, made a different kind of discovery. While studying the rare minerals that everyone was fighting over, he found something unexpected. The elements had medical applications that none of the 3 species had ever considered. Properly processed, the minerals could be used to create treatments for dozens of diseases, including a plague that had haunted the Velith for 6 generations. The research collaboration that followed was difficult, frustrating, and slow. Scientists from 3 species who had been taught to hate each other had to learn to work together, to share data, to trust each other's results. But 10 years later, the first Velith children were born free of the plague. Their parents named many of them Byung-Hoon, in honor of the human who had made it possible. Not all the victories were so dramatic. Most were small, quiet things. A Mordray worker sharing food with a Velith colleague. A Pelax engineer teaching human students about hive architecture. A security team from 3 species playing cards together during off-duty hours. Learning each other's games, learning each other's jokes. Admiral Una Park visited the zone in the 4th year, now promoted and assigned to oversee the entire operation. She walked through Station 7, watching Velith and Mordray working side by side, and felt something she had not expected. Pride. We did not change them, Thorak told her during a formal dinner. His many eyes were softer now, less suspicious. You did not make us forget our history, but you gave us something else. A reason to try. That's all we ever wanted, Una said. A chance to prove that tomorrow can be different from yesterday. Thorak made that grinding sound again, his laugh. Humans, always believing in tomorrow. It is either your greatest strength or your greatest weakness. Una smiled. Maybe both. Maybe that's what makes us who we are. The zone was not peaceful. There were still arguments, still tensions, still moments when everything threatened to fall apart. Old hatreds did not disappear overnight. The children of warriors still carried their parents' wounds. But something had changed. Something small and fragile, like a seed pushing through cracked earth. Hope. And humans, stubborn and strange and impossibly optimistic, kept tending that seed. Day after day. Year after year, waiting to see what might grow. 10 years after the Boundary Cooperative Zone was established, Admiral Una Park stood once again in the Great Hall of Station Ornth. The crystal walls still glowed with soft light. The curved seats still rose up on all sides, filled with delegates from a dozen species. But everything else had changed. The Galactic Council had not gathered to argue about mining rights or ancient territorial claims. They had gathered because something was coming. Something terrible. They called it the Hollow Dot. It appeared at the galaxy's edge 3 years ago, a machine intelligence, vast and cold and hungry. It did not negotiate. It did not make demands. It simply consumed worlds, fleets, entire civilizations. The images on the display screens were horrifying. Cities reduced to ash. Ships torn apart like paper. Billions of lives ending in silence and fire. The delegates in the chamber were afraid. Una could see it in every species, every face, every trembling limb. The Velith general, a different one now, younger, but with the same compound eyes, sat rigid with tension. The Mordre delegate Terzis, old now but still formidable, had coiled so tight that its scales were creaking. Even the ancient Pelori speaker seemed diminished, its feathers dull with worry. "We must flee," a delegate from a species Una did not recognize was saying. "Pull back our fleets, abandon the outer systems, concentrate our defenses. There is nowhere to flee," another delegate argued. "The hollow does not stop. It does not rest. Running only delays the inevitable. Then we fight." The Velith general shouted. "Alone if necessary. The Velith will not hide while others. Your fleets cannot even slow it down." Terzis hissed. "I have seen the battle records. 100 ships lost in minutes. Your courage is admirable, General, but courage alone will not save us." The argument continued, round and round, fear feeding anger, anger feeding despair. Una watched and waited. She was not young anymore. Gray streaked her hair. Lines had formed around her eyes. She had seen so much in the past decade, so much building, so much hope. She would not let it end like this. When the speaker called for order, Una stepped forward. The chamber fell silent. Some things had not changed in 10 years. Humanity still made aliens nervous. "I remember standing in this room," Una began, "years ago. I was a young captain then, watching you all step aside when we spoke. I remember seeing fear in your eyes, fear of what we were capable of." She paused, letting the memory settle over the assembly. "That fear was earned. We are a violent species. We have done terrible things to ourselves and to each other. We carry that darkness with us wherever we go." The delegate shifted uneasily. This was not what they had expected. "But we carry something else too." Una's voice grew stronger. "We carry hope. We carry the stubborn belief that tomorrow can be better than today. We carried it through ice ages and plagues and wars that killed millions. We carried it to our moon and to our stars. And now we carry it here to you." She activated the display controls, and a new image appeared above the platform. It showed fleets, human ships, yes, but also Velith cruisers, Mordre battleships, Pelex carriers, and vessels from a dozen other species. They were positioned together, their formations interlocking, their weapon systems linked. "The Hollow thinks we are alone," Una said. "It thinks it can pick us off one by one, world by world, species by species. It is wrong, because we are not alone anymore. None of us are." She turned to face the Mordre section, finding Terzis among the delegates. The old serpent had been a young officer during the Soul Response, had watched human ships ram nuclear weapons into Mordre cruisers. They had been enemies once, as bitter as any in the galaxy. "Delegate Terzis," Una said, "I believe you owe us a shot." The chamber was utterly still. No one moved. No one breathed. Then, slowly Terzis uncoiled. The great serpent rose to its full height, silver scales catching the light. Ancient eyes meeting Una's across the vast space between them. And Terzis did something no Mordre had ever done before a human. He bowed. "We shoot first this time," Terzis said. His translation device carried an unmistakable warmth. "You shoot last." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Velith general rose, its limbs clicking against its armor. The Velith stand with humanity. The Pelax delegation buzzed with rapid communication. Then their speakers stepped forward. "The hives are united. We fight together." One by one, species after species, the delegates rose. Some declared their support with words. Others simply stood in silence, which said more than any speech could. The chamber erupted not in argument, but in something that sounded almost like cheering. The war against the Hollow lasted 3 years. It was brutal beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Fleets were shattered. Worlds burned. Heroes rose and fell, their names recorded in the archives of a dozen civilizations. But humanity had taught the galaxy something invaluable: how to fight not as separate species, but as one. Velith warriors charged into battle alongside Mordre soldiers, their ancient hatred forgotten in the fire of common purpose. Pelax engineers worked day and night to repair human ships, to improve Velith weapons, to find weaknesses in the Hollow's endless armies. And everywhere, holding the Alliance together through moments of doubt and despair, were the humans. Not the strongest, not the smartest, not the most advanced. Just the most stubborn. Ambassador Dohan Lee did not live to see the victory. He passed in the second year of the war, surrounded by friends from 6 different species. His final words were recorded for history. We are all strangers until we choose not to be. When the Hollow finally fell, when the last machine consciousness was destroyed, in a battle that spanned 3 star systems, the celebration spread across the entire galaxy. Species that had been enemies for millennia embraced. Children who had grown up in fear looked up at stars that were safe once more. And at the center of it all, neither commanding nor conquering, stood humanity. They stepped into the silence all those years ago. A young species with nothing to offer, but a different way of thinking. They had looked at ancient hatreds and asked a simple question: why? They had failed again and again. They had made mistakes. They had been arrogant, reckless, infuriatingly stubborn, but they had never stopped trying. A memorial was built at Station Orant, in the great chamber where it had all begun. A simple stone pillar with words carved in 100 languages. Humanity's greatest weapon was never its violence. It was its stubborn refusal to believe that today's enemy couldn't become tomorrow's friend. Admiral Una Park stood before that memorial. Years after the war, watching delegates from species she had never imagined working together flow past. The fear was gone from their eyes. In its place was something new. Trust. Did we get it right? A young human officer asked her. He reminded her of herself, all those years ago, eager, uncertain, hoping. Una smiled. It was an old smile, but a warm one. We got it started, she said. That's all anyone can do. Start something and hope the ones who come after will carry it forward. She looked up at the crystal ceiling, at the stars beyond, at a galaxy that had learned, slowly and painfully, that the distance between enemies and allies is only as vast as we choose to make it. The rest, she said softly, is up to them. And somewhere out in the endless dark, new ships were launching. Velith and Mordre and human and a dozen other species, flying together, exploring together, strangers who had chosen not to be.